The crisis of the heavenly demon mink clan, which had been triggered by the retreat of 2 alien demon kings, was finally resolved. This event clearly caused a huge stir within the clan, and the entire defense system of the heavenly demon mink clan had become extremely strict as a result. Some of the stronger heavenly demon minks even formed reconnaissance teams, traveling back and forth to search every corner within 1,000 miles of the clan's territory. Anything that had been tainted by demonic energy was uprooted and removed. Clearly, they were greatly shaken by the eternal phantom demon flower seed buried within the mountains, as this crisis nearly inflicted severe damage to the clan's primordial energy. As several days passed, the top experts of the heavenly demon mink clan, who had been in seclusion within the celestial cavern, gradually woke up. They were both shocked and deeply fearful when they learned about the changes within the clan and the trap in the celestial cavern. Upon reflection, if it hadn't been for Lin Dong, perhaps 7 or 8 of these top experts in seclusion would not have survived. The upper echelons of the heavenly demon mink clan were, without a doubt, extremely enraged by the turn of events. Hao Juyu would likely face a very bad outcome. However, such matters were not within Lin Dong's concern. Due to the severe injuries within his body, he had spent nearly 10 days recovering in the heavenly demon mink clan before he began to feel better. During this crisis, Lin Dong clearly played a crucial role. If he hadn't infiltrated the celestial cavern and rescued the heavenly demon mink clan leader, if he hadn't delayed Hao Juyu with serious injuries when the entire clan was trapped by the eternal phantom demon flower and unable to spare any hands, the casualties of the heavenly demon mink clan would have been far more severe. Because of this, during his recovery in the heavenly demon mink clan, Lin Dong could feel the gratitude and admiration from those around him. The heavenly demon mink clan was always proud, and this could be seen in Little Mink. For them to admire someone, especially a human, was no simple task. Of course, it wasn't just the ordinary clan members. Even those top experts who had come out of seclusion from the celestial cavern, upon learning that Lin Dong had infiltrated the celestial cavern and cleared the eternal phantom demon flower, felt nothing but gratitude. This was why, during these few days, Lin Dong was constantly being visited, which became so overwhelming that he had to close the door and rest in order to get some peace. As time passed and more top experts emerged from seclusion, the tense atmosphere within the heavenly demon mink clan slightly eased. The reason the heavenly demon mink clan had been driven to such a state by the 2 alien demon kings was due to the clan's internal emptiness and Hao Juyu's betrayal. Having learned this bitter lesson, the heavenly demon mink clan would certainly not make the same mistake again. When the heavenly demon mink clan became truly serious, the foundations that belonged to the 4 dominant clans began to show. If the 2 heavenly phantom kings dared to attack again, they would surely not be able to escape unscathed. As the atmosphere within the heavenly demon mink clan relaxed, Lin Dong's injuries were finally fully healed. Outside a quiet bamboo hut on a mountain peak, Lin Dong sat cross-legged at the edge of a cliff. From here, he had a clear view of the heavenly demon mink clan below. Above, the protective array of the clan was activated, and teams of elite guards occasionally flew by. Whenever they saw Lin Dong sitting at the edge of the cliff, they would slow down, greet him with a smile and a fist salute, and then continue on their way. Lin Dong smiled as he watched the guards leave and stretched lazily. Looking up at the blue sky, the brutal battle from 10 days ago still echoed in his mind. Even after fighting so hard, I still couldn't kill a strong warrior in the revolution stage. Lin Dong looked down at his fair, slender hands and couldn't help but smile wryly. The battle with Hao Juyu had exhausted all his methods, but even so, he still failed to kill him. It made him reflect on the gap between the death mystique stage and the revolution stage, which truly seemed like an insurmountable chasm. Now, he could threaten a revolution stage expert, but in a life-or-death fight, he wouldn't hold the upper hand. Furthermore, due to his limitations in strength, he couldn't drag the battle on for too long, and this was his fatal flaw. Therefore, the only way forward was to increase his strength. As for primordial energy, even if I break through to the perfect completion of the death mystique stage, the gap between us remains difficult to bridge. So, I'll have to focus on spiritual energy. Lin Dong muttered to himself. At present, His primordial energy cultivation was at the peak of the great completion of the death mystique stage, just a step away from perfect completion. But even if he made that step, it would be difficult for him to immediately have the ability to kill a revolution stage expert. His spiritual energy has now reached the peak of the great completion of a mortal talisman master, enough to rival a warrior at the peak of the perfect completion of the death mystique stage. To go further, he must reach the rumored realm of the Talisman Grandmaster. This is a critical juncture in the cultivation of spiritual energy. Once he steps into it, the power of his spiritual energy will be fully unleashed. At that time, the might a Talisman Grandmaster can demonstrate will far exceed that of an ordinary warrior at the revolution stage. And if Lindong wants to reach a level comparable to the revolution stage in a short time, the only path to follow is to push his spiritual energy to its limits. If I want to break through to the realm of the Talisman Grandmaster, the eternal phantom demon flower is absolutely essential, Lin Dong murmured. Here it is, the thing you asked for. As soon as Lin Dong's words fell, a familiar laugh echoed from behind him. He turned his head and saw the little mink, who had appeared behind him at some point. With a flick of his sleeve, the little mink released several jade boxes, which flew out of his hands and landed heavily on the ground. These jade boxes were covered with intricate runes, clearly sealing whatever they contained. This is the eternal phantom demon flower you wanted. There are 69 of them. I have to ask, do you really want to use such dangerous things for your cultivation? You know how terrifying these flowers are. Even my father couldn't handle them, and you? The little mink frowned. Although the eternal phantom demon flowers were sealed now, his gaze toward the jade boxes still held a deep sense of caution. Don't worry. I won't do anything foolish, Lin Dong smiled and replied. His eyes shone with delight as he looked at the 69 jade boxes, and with a single motion, he clenched his hand. The ancestral stone appeared, its glowing light flickering as it absorbed all of them. I spoke with my father about your plan to use the eternal phantom demon flowers for a secluded meditation. He said you should go to the celestial cavern for the retreat. He'll personally lead the elders to guard you. And if anything goes wrong, he will step in to rescue you, the little mink said. Then please thank the clan leader for me, Lin Dong replied, slightly taken aback, but not refusing. Though Yen hadn't explained in full, Lin Dong could sense that using such a dangerous substance to break through spiritual energy would surely come with considerable risks. If the heavenly demon mink clan leader was involved, there might be a greater sense of security. You've done so much for our heavenly demon mink clan, and everyone is grateful. This is nothing. The little mink waved his hand and said, When do you plan to begin your retreat? Right now, Lin Dong thought for a moment before replying. I knew it. The little mink smiled, not at all surprised. He nodded and said, I'll take you to the celestial cavern. You don't need to worry about anything while in meditation. I know you've integrated the Beast War Domain's power with Little Yin to form the 4-Elephant Palace. Don't worry, I'll send people over to help him maintain order. No one will dare to cause trouble. Lin Dong nodded and clenched the ancestral stone in his hand. Whether or not he could break through to the realm of the Talisman Grandmaster would depend on this move. Having made his decision, Lin Dong didn't delay. The two of them immediately headed deeper into the heavenly demon mink clan's domain. After several minutes, they arrived at the entrance of the celestial cavern, where the guards had grown even more vigilant. There, Lin Dong saw the heavenly demon mink clan leader and the grand elder, Zhu Li, waiting. Lin Dong, young friend, the celestial cavern has been thoroughly inspected. There will be no hidden dangers. You can meditate inside with peace of mind, the heavenly demon mink clan leader said with a smile upon seeing Lin Dong. Thank you, clan leader, Lin Dong said, cupping his hands in gratitude. No need for thanks. Just let the little mink guide you in. We'll stand guard both inside and outside the celestial cavern, the clan leader said, waving his hand. Lin Dong nodded, not wasting any more words. He exchanged a glance with the little mink and then immediately flew into the celestial cavern. This young friend Lin Dong is quite impressive. Not only does he possess the ancestral stone, which is ranked second among the relics of the ancients, but he also holds the primordial dragon bones inside him. Those are only found in the hands of the unparalleled geniuses who command the demonic beast world. Zhu remarked as he watched Lin Dong disappear into the celestial cavern. Seems like little Mink has made a good friend after all. The clan leader nodded slightly and then narrowed his eyes, saying, but to think he's using the eternal phantom demon flowers to break through to the Talisman Grandmaster realm, that's something I've never heard of. We need to keep a close eye on him. He's done a lot for our clan. If anything were to happen here, our heavenly demon Mink clan's reputation would be ruined. Heh, rest assured, clan leader. I've already informed the one at the deepest part of the celestial cavern. He'll be paying attention. Zhu smiled and reassured him. Inside the celestial cavern, in a quiet cave, Lin Dong gazed at the entrance from which the light screen had risen after someone exited. He took a deep breath of the fragrant air, which resembled sandalwood, and then, with a grasp of his hand, the ancient ancestral stone appeared. His deep voice echoed within the cave. Yin, let's begin. As Lin Dong's voice fell, a gentle glow immediately shot out from his body, transforming into the ancestral stone, which then floated in the air. The figure of Yin appeared on the surface of the stone. Have you made up your mind? Yin asked, looking at Lin Dong, who was sitting cross-legged on the stone platform. Is there any turning back at this point? Lin Dong smiled, his expression fearless. Over the years, he had encountered countless dangers, and if he were afraid, he wouldn't have made it this far. Yin nodded slightly in appreciation before waving his sleeve. Streams of light shot out from it, falling into the cave. As the light dissipated, several eternal phantom demon flowers materialized. Though they were still sealed, the sheer number of them exuded a subtle fragrance that sent shivers down one's spine. There are a total of 84 eternal phantom demon flowers here. You should know how powerful these are. The illusion they create, when gathered in such numbers, can trap even a peak-stage Revolution Realm expert to their death. A rare look of seriousness appeared on Yan's face. Lin Dong nodded slightly. He remembered that just 3 of these flowers had been enough to trap the heavenly demon Mink clan leader. He was well aware of how terrifying their power was. I will use the power of the ancestral stone to purify the demonic essence of the eternal phantom demon flowers. Then, we will use their power to construct Purgatory. Purgatory? Lin Dong's heart shook slightly at the name. It's a place specifically for cultivating spiritual energy, created by my master back in the day. Unfortunately, the Purgatory he created is now lost, so I need to use the power of the eternal phantom demon flowers to recreate it. If you can pass the trial in Purgatory, you should be able to reach the level of a Talisman Grandmaster. And how would I know when I've passed? Lin Dong frowned. I don't know. Yin shrugged lightly, his voice indifferent. You'll have to find the answer yourself. Lin Dong fell silent. Also, I can only use the power of the eternal phantom demon flowers to construct Purgatory. I cannot enter it myself, so while you're inside, you will face excruciating trials, and you will lose all perception of the outside world. Even I won't be able to help you. Inside, you'll only have yourself to rely on. Yan's gaze bored deeply into Lin Dong. His voice lowered. Don't think of the illusion as fake. If you fail to pass Purgatory, you will be trapped forever, until your spiritual essence withers completely. At that point, you will vanish from this world entirely. Do we continue? Lin Dong tightened his grip slightly, then nodded slowly, his resolve firm. Heh, good. Yin smiled with approval and said no more. He raised his hand and pointed into the air. The symbols on the eternal phantom demon flowers began to dissipate, and when the last symbol vanished, the air inside the cave seemed to freeze. Huh. An eerie sound quietly echoed, and Lin Dong saw a thick, black phantom fragrance surge out like a released demon, rampaging through the cave. With the sheer number of eternal phantom demon flowers present, the intensity of the fragrance was like ink, so thick that even a peak-stage Revolution Realm expert would certainly perish if they entered. The warm white light enveloping Lin Dong's body blocked the ink-like fragrance, while Yin stood a few feet away, unaffected by the fragrance. Very soon, the phantom fragrance will begin to erode you. The light around you will purify the demonic essence in the fragrance, but you will still fall into the illusion. After that, it will all depend on you. Yan's expression was serious. Lin Dong nodded slowly, taking a deep breath to calm his turbulent emotions. Then, he saw the warm light shield around him gradually fade. The black phantom fragrance, dark as ink and wild like demons from the underworld, surged toward him. Come, let me see what you've got. Lin Dong closed his eyes slowly, and just before his eyelids shut, a fiery look flashed across them. The black phantom fragrance finally entered the light shield and enveloped Lin Dong's body. All sound vanished at that moment. Yin stood quietly to the side, watching as Lin Dong fell into complete silence. As the black phantom fragrance enveloped Lin Dong, he soon felt his consciousness rapidly sinking into darkness. In the dark, there was utter silence. After what seemed like an eternity, the darkness finally began to fade bit by bit. The blinding sunlight shone down from the sky, causing Lin Dong to instinctively squint his eyes. His palm touched the ground and grasped a handful of intensely hot sand. Lin Dong, still squinting, surveyed his surroundings. The entire world seemed to be a wasteland of red and yellow, with no other colors in sight. The heat rose around him, like the air above a boiling cauldron, and he felt as if he were a grasshopper trapped inside that cauldron. It seemed to be a desert. Is this purgatory? Lin Dong furrowed his brow, stood up, and lightly dusted off the hot sand in his hand. Then, by habit, he tried to summon his primordial energy, but his body froze in place. He realized that, at that moment, all his primordial energy had vanished completely. I can't even use my primordial energy? Lin Dong's brows furrowed deeply as he checked his body. To his dismay, he realized that he had nothing. No overwhelming primordial energy, no powerful physique, and no spiritual energy. The only thing he possessed was a fragile body, just like when he first began cultivating back in Qingyang town. Lin Dong silently looked up. The blazing sun above him felt like fire, and its scorching heat made his entire body burn. The sand beneath his feet gradually began to sting his soles. With his weak body, how long could he endure in this place? My body now, it must be a manifestation of my spiritual energy, but isn't it a bit too weak? And this purgatory, it's way too quiet. Lin Dong looked into the distance, and his expression slowly began to change. Far in the horizon, a massive tornado, filled with an ocean of yellow sand, was rapidly approaching. That's fast. Seeing this, Lin Dong cursed under his breath and immediately began running. He had no doubt that if his current body were caught in that storm, he would be torn to pieces, but it was clear that the storm was heading straight for him. No matter how fast he ran, his efforts were futile. Soon, a powerful gust of wind whipped a hot sandstorm, like a whip of sand, crashing into his body. Boom! A dull thud rang out as Lin Dong was sent flying. Intense pain spread from his shoulder, and when he looked back, he saw blood pouring from his back. A hideous wound stretched from his shoulder down to his waist. It hurt so much. Lin Dong trembled all over. The pain was far worse than any physical injury he had ever experienced. It was as if that sand whip had torn his body apart. Sweat dripped down Lin Dong's forehead, and as he raised his head, his pupils contracted. The storm was almost upon him. In the storm, dozens of enormous sand whips flew through the air, lashing out at him. Lin Dong awkwardly rolled and tumbled on the ground. Two of the sand whips slammed into the earth, making the ground tremble beneath him. Boom, boom, boom. But given the current agility of his body, it was impossible for him to dodge completely. In the next moment, several more sand whips lashed across his body. Slap! Lin Dong's body was whipped into the sand, and half of him was exposed, his flesh torn. The unimaginable pain instantly made his eyes fill with bloodshot veins. He finally understood why this trial was called Purgatory, because here, it truly felt like it could kill you. Boom, boom, boom. The ferocious storm didn't give Lin Dong any time to think. The tempest raged on, and the sand whips lashed out repeatedly, landing on his battered body, now embedded in the sand. Crack, crack. The sharp, crisp sound of the sand whips landing on his body echoed through the desert. At first, the figure struggling in the sand would fight against it, but soon, it lay motionless, as if all life had drained from it. The storm raged for half a day before finally easing away. An hour after the storm had passed, a blood-soaked hand slowly reached out from the sand, and a bloodied figure weakly crawled out. Panting heavily, Lin Dong's vision was blurry, and his face, covered in blood, bore a faint trace of lingering terror. He finally understood the true horror of this purgatory. Lin Dong lay on the scorching sand, feeling the intense pain in his body gradually fading away. At the same time, his once frail body seemed to have gained a slight bit of strength. This discovery caused a faint joy to rise in Lin Dong's heart. If this was the case, then after he recovered a bit more, he should be able to endure the next round of pain with more ease. Just as this thought crossed Lin Dong's mind, he suddenly noticed that the temperature in the air had abnormally dropped. He slowly raised his head and saw that the cold, biting wind in the sky had transformed into a vast sea of sharp wind blades. No way. Lin Dong, already in excruciating pain, felt a severe shiver run through his body at the sight. Woo! But the reality offered Lin Dong no mercy. No sooner had he spoken than the overwhelming wind blades howled down upon him, engulfing him entirely. A heart-wrenching scream echoed through the air once again. The blazing desert winds, hot as though carrying magma, the icy sharp wind blades as cold as a knife, and the snowstorm capable of turning a spiritual body into an ice sculpture. Since entering this region, Lin Dong had finally come to fully understand the meaning of this purgatory. In this place, he no longer possessed the powerful physical body or primordial energy he once had. All that remained was his fragile spiritual body. The strength of this spiritual body made it so that any trial in this purgatory could truly annihilate him in this illusory, shifting world. However, once one entered a place like this, there was no turning back. He was not in a position to make choices. The only thing he could do was endure. Otherwise, the only outcome waiting for him would be a dead end. Training was brutal, but fortunately, Lin Dong had anticipated this. There was no power in the world that came for free. If the Talisman sect were so easy to reach, its numbers would not be so few. To emerge from the cocoon as a butterfly, one had to endure the endless pain of shedding one's flesh. This, Lin Dong had understood clearly from the very beginning. Hailstones poured down from the sky like a torrential rain. The red-yellow earth had already turned white, and a visible chill spread through the air, to the point that even the atmosphere seemed to show signs of turning to ice crystals. In some remote part of this icy, snowy land, a thin figure trembled under the falling snowflakes. Sitting cross-legged on the ground, his skin had taken on a dark cyan hue. The blood, muscles, and bones within his body seemed to be corroded by the cold. SSSHH. Snowflakes fluttered around him. As they brushed against his body, streaks of blood appeared, but no blood flowed from the wounds. It looked as though he were a dried-up corpse. His black hair hung down, and his lifeless black eyes had no focus or fluctuation. A sense of dusk seemed to radiate from his form, as if he were a man on the brink of death. Sharp as blades, the snowflakes continuously cut through his body, leaving more and more blood streaks. Yet, the figure did not move at all. This corpse-like stillness lasted a full day, until the snowflakes and hail slowly began to weaken and eventually disappeared. As the snowflakes dissipated, the pervasive cold in the air also began to retreat bit by bit, and with the retreat of the chill, a trace of vitality emerged from the depths of the figure's unfocused black eyes. Then, his body began to tremble violently. His palms clenched tightly, nails digging into his palms. His body, covered with wounds, slowly turned a crimson red, and blood began to seep out like a spring. In an instant, he became drenched in blood. A roar, long suppressed in his throat, came out in a low, hoarse sound, like a dying beast, reverberating across the land. He knelt on the ground, his forehead pressed against the earth, fists crashing heavily into the ground. Earlier, the cold had numbed his body, causing him to lose all sense of it. Even though countless snowflakes as sharp as blades had passed over him, he had felt nothing. What was terrifying was that the excruciating pain did not disappear instantly, but instead accumulated on his body. When the cold receded and his body regained control, the sudden eruption of pain was enough to drive even the most mentally determined person mad. The agonized growls lasted for half an hour before the figure gradually began to slow down. His body collapsed onto the ground, his fingers too weak to even move. Damn it! Lin Dong buried half of his face in the sand, his features appearing incredibly haggard. It seemed that the passage of time here was different from the outside world, but Lin Dong had endured 2 full months of the intense suffering that this place demanded. Each day was spent in endless pain, and every time, he felt death drawing closer. Though he had often walked the razor's edge before, that feeling was especially pronounced here. At least 10 times, his tightly held sanity nearly slipped away, overwhelmed by the terrifying agony. If he lost himself, his spiritual body would vanish completely, leaving him with no chance of returning. This time, the icy chill is even stronger than before, Lin Dong thought to himself, sensing his gradually recovering strength. His previously clouded mind was starting to clear, and he could feel that this time, the chill was much fiercer than the last. Clearly, every trial here grew stronger, and if he couldn't grow stronger to match, he would eventually be unable to withstand it, leading to a bad outcome. To survive here, he had to adapt to the brutal rhythm of this place. This overwhelming sense of danger forced Lin Dong's body to grow stronger after each agonizing ordeal. The one thing that reassured him was that he could feel his body growing slowly stronger. This body was not his true form, but his spiritual body. In other words, his spiritual energy was gradually increasing, and he was steadily progressing toward the realm of the Talisman Grandmaster. Though this progress was slow, it still gave him a glimmer of hope. Lin Dong exhaled and lifted his head to gaze at the endless land before him. In his eyes, there was a determination that no amount of hardship over the years could erase. He believed that one day, he would look at this purgatory with disdain. "You'd better wait for me." Lin Dong gritted his teeth and muttered to the sky, then struggled to stand up and staggered off in the distance. He knew that soon, another round of trials would be upon him. The longer he stayed in this purgatory, the more he sensed that he was not alone. That faint awareness could be the key to eventually leaving this place. He had made a grand vow, but the trials he faced were still filled with seemingly endless pain and hardships, each more maddening than the last. Lin Dong never had a moment to rest. Sometimes, he even forgot what it felt like when his body was at peace. In Purgatory, the concept of time was blurry, and the passage of time seemed to differ completely from the outside world. The power of the eternal phantom demon flower, while strange, certainly had some formidable qualities. At first, Lin Dong could still track time in his mind, but as the pain in his body intensified each day, he could no longer focus on that. He had to draw in all his strength just to resist the various threats of death from Purgatory. Time passed aimlessly, with no respite from the suffering. 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years. In the desolate Purgatory, various trials repeated endlessly. The thin figure, seemingly from a distant place, grew stronger little by little under the constant threat of death. He endured the pain and loneliness, much like a cocoon, slowly accumulating strength, waiting for the day he would break free and emerge like a butterfly. Once again, it was the red-yellow desert. In the desert, dozens of massive tornadoes were rampaging wildly. Giant sand whips, like the swings of a giant, tore through the air with an ear-piercing sound that echoed across the land. Crack, crack. As the view zoomed in, the sound of sand whips landing on a person's body rang out. Among the tornadoes, a dust-covered figure slowly walked out. The giant sand whips, with tremendous force, howled toward the figure, striking him hard. The deep, harsh sound of the impact filled the air. However, what was surprising was that despite such fierce attacks landing on the figure, he remained perfectly still. Not even his slow pace faltered in the slightest. The brutal attacks that seemed as if they could crush a giant now appeared completely ineffective. The figure eventually stood firm. He raised his dark eyes, which seemed especially deep, like a mysterious black hole in the night sky. He stood there, watching the massive tornadoes that loomed like giants. These storms were many times stronger than the one he had encountered when he first entered this purgatory. Yet now, they posed no threat to him whatsoever. How many years of effort had it taken him to get here? 5 years? 10 years? How much pain and torment had he endured? Pain so intense that even he had nearly cracked. He could no longer remember the exact time. All he knew now was that these trials, which once terrified him, had become commonplace. He had grown stronger. Have I grown stronger? Lin Dong lowered his head, staring at his pale, slender hands. When he first started, these palms held no power. But now, he seemed to smile faintly, then slowly raised his hand and gently grasped the air, facing the massive tornadoes. Boom! The raging storms in the heavens and earth came to an abrupt halt, as if a giant hand had reached out and seized them, freezing the violently spinning tornadoes in place. Whoosh! Whoosh! The storm exploded, scattering into a haze of yellow mist, which fell gently to the ground. Yellow sand fell around Lin Dong's body, and he let out a long breath. At this moment, he could finally feel the vast, ocean-like power within him. It was the spiritual energy he had cultivated over the years. This spiritual energy, it seemed much stronger than before. This trial should be coming to an end. Lin Dong slowly closed his eyes. After a moment, he suddenly opened them wide, his gaze carrying an intense, long-suppressed sharpness and killing intent. Now, you should appear. He gazed into the void, and his deep voice echoed throughout the heavens and earth. The yellow sandstorm blanketing the sky obscured his vision, but Lin Dong stood still amidst the swirling yellow dust, his eyes piercing through the mist, locking onto a specific point in space. The sharpness in his eyes, hidden beneath his black hair, had not been seen for a long time. After Lin Dong's words fell, there was still no peculiar fluctuation in the heavens and earth. Yet his expression remained unchanged, his gaze unwavering, fixed on that point in the void. Long ago, during his earlier training, he had vaguely sensed the presence of another entity within this desolate purgatory. However, that feeling had always been vague. Now, with the rapid advancement of his spiritual energy, that sense had finally become clear. The hidden presence seemed extremely terrifying. But Lin Dong knew very well that in order to leave this place, he must defeat this hidden guardian. Otherwise, he would be trapped here forever, his body rotting away. These trials no longer serve me. It's time to take matters into my own hands. Lin Dong raised his head, his black eyes blazing with fiery determination. Buzz! Buzz! This time, the void finally began to stir. The air rippled, and the yellow mist began to gather toward a certain spot in the void. After a while, the yellow sand in the air morphed into an enormous face. The face was blurry, difficult to discern, but somehow, just the sight of this unfamiliar face caused Lin Dong's pores to tighten in an instant. He even felt a hum deep within him, a sensation he hadn't experienced in a long time. That energy. It was the energy of the devouring ancestral talisman and the thunder ancestral talisman. The two ancestral talismans were reacting within his body. Though Lin Dong was currently unable to control the two ancestral talismans while in purgatory, as their master, he could still sense their subtle movements. A dangerous feeling, Lin Dong muttered, his face grave. His gaze remained fixed on the enormous yellow face in the sky. He swore that no one had ever made him feel this indescribable terror. Not even the Dark Lord of the demon prison could compare. Someone actually managed to create a purgatory realm. Just as Lin Dong was processing this shock, the strange yellow face in the sky began to squirm. A voice, ancient, as though it had existed since the beginning of time, echoed throughout the purgatory. Lin Dong listened to the near-whispered words, and his eyelids twitched. The shock in his heart caused even his current composure to falter, forcing him to take a step back. He slowly raised his finger and pointed at the giant face, his voice hoarse. Are you the ancestral talisman master? A being capable of inducing such a terrifying feeling, even greater than that of the Dark Lord, and speaking these words, there could be only one answer. The legendary Ancestral Talisman Master, who once stood at the pinnacle of this world. The Ancestral Talisman Master? Heh, such a distant title. The yellow face in the sand swirled, its sand-like eyes slowly shifting downwards until they locked onto Lin Dong's body. I am but a mark left behind by the Ancestral Talisman Master when he created this purgatory. As long as someone can form this realm, I will awaken. Of course, I am also the final guardian here. If you can defeat me, you may break through this purgatory. Lin Dong's pupils contracted slightly. Though this was merely an imprint before him, it was, after all, left by someone who once stood at the very pinnacle of this world. What's the matter? Are you afraid? Judging by your over 10 years of cultivation in Purgatory, you don't seem like one to fear so easily. Amidst the rolling sands, that ancient voice echoed once more. Sigh. Taking a deep breath, Lin Dong gradually reined in the shock in his eyes. Regardless of who this person might be, if he allowed fear to creep into his heart now, he might never escape from this purgatory. Senior, please instruct me. Lin Dong cupped his fists and called out in a deep, serious voice. Since this enormous face before him was the final gatekeeper, the only way to leave was to defeat him. Then let me witness the fruits of your training over these years. As the giant face roiled with yellow sand, the entire landscape began to tremble violently. The ground cracked open, and fiery red magma gushed forth like seawater. In a mere few breaths, the desert transformed into a sea of magma. Lin Dong leaped into the air, eyeing the scorching ocean of magma below with a slight frown. This giant face seemed capable of wielding the very power of this purgatory, possessing an overwhelming might in every gesture. Boom! The magma sea roiled, and from it, colossal streams of crimson magma shot upward, coiling together like massive, fiery dragons. These dragons soared through the sky, their magma bodies glinting dark red as they began to solidify, transforming into crystalline forms that glowed fiercely. The crystalline magma dragons coiled in the sky, their scarlet eyes fixed on Lin Dong, exuding a terrifying heat that distorted the surrounding space. Although the crystalline magma dragons were still over 1,000 feet away, Lin Dong could already feel the scorching heat spreading across his skin, a searing pain radiating outward. This attack was far more formidable than any of the trials he had endured over the years in Purgatory. This final challenge was indeed no easy task. Roar! The crystalline magma dragons roared, then launched themselves at Lin Dong in a blinding surge of crimson light, covering the sky. Watching the 18 magma dragons charging toward him, Lin Dong's expression grew grave. His right hand slowly clenched, and a ripple of silvery white energy swiftly gathered in his palm. This was the spiritual energy he had honed over years of arduous training. Begone! With a steely gaze, Lin Dong punched forward, sending a vast torrent of spiritual energy surging forth like a flood. The energy coalesced into a massive, 1,000-foot-wide silver-white hand. This giant hand was distinctly different from one formed by primordial energy. It seemed almost tangible. This manifestation of spiritual energy was a mark of one on the path to the realm of the Talisman Grandmaster. At this level, spiritual energy was no longer as ethereal as before. Even in direct confrontation, it was no weaker than primordial energy. Bang! The silver-white hand struck one of the crystalline magma dragons with devastating force, shattering its crystal body with a loud explosion. A mournful roar echoed as the dragon's body was obliterated. Bang! Bang! Lin Dong showed no mercy. With a thought, the silver-white hand left after images as it pounded repeatedly at the same spot on the dragon's crystalline body. Magma erupted from the wounds on the crystalline dragon, but this creature was far from ordinary. Even after Lin Dong's powerful attacks had shattered its crystal form, it still resisted crumbling. Observing its resilience only made Lin Dong's expression grow even more serious. Boom! While Lin Dong focused his attacks on one crystalline magma dragon, the remaining 17 charged forward, their scorching claws tearing through the sky, smashing the very space around Lin Dong to pieces. As he looked at the incoming magma-clad dragon claws that blotted out the sky, Lin Dong took a deep breath, a sharp gleam flashing in his black eyes. Buzz. A surge of silvery-white spiritual energy radiated from within him, forming a massive silver-white bell around him. Clang, clang. The giant dragon claws crashed into the silver-white bell one after another, filling the world with a clear, urgent ringing. Under the relentless assault of the 17 crystalline magma dragons, cracks swiftly spread across the silver-white bell, and in the next moment, it shattered. Whoosh! As the bell shattered, a streak of silver-white light shot out, flashing like lightning. In the blink of an eye, Lin Dong appeared above the head of the previously injured crystalline magma dragon. At this moment, Lin Dong's entire body was enveloped in silver-white battle armor. In his hands, he gripped a sharp silver spear, its tip radiating with an extremely fierce and intense aura. Kill! A deep, murderous voice emanated from within the silver armor, and in the next instant, the spear in Lin Dong's hand expanded to 100-foot length. With a single swing, the spear pierced through the head of the magma crystal dragon with a resounding poof, completely penetrating it. Roar! A shrill roar echoed across the battlefield as the magma crystal dragon struggled wildly. Eventually, it exploded into fragments. As it did, a brilliant light rainbow, filled with overwhelming power, shot out and rushed into Lin Dong's body. Whoosh! As the peculiar light rainbow entered Lin Dong's body, his mental energy surged, increasing by around 10% in an instant. I see now. Lin Dong, feeling the sudden surge of mental energy within him, was taken aback for a moment before throwing his head back and laughing loudly. In the next moment, his body shot out like silver lightning once again. The silver spear in his hand lashed out like a dragon, clashing violently with the 17 remaining magma crystal dragons. Boom, boom, boom. Magma rained down from the sky as a silver figure was repeatedly knocked back, cracks forming in his battle armor. Yet his battle spirit remained fierce. Each time his spear swung, it pierced through a magma crystal dragon, causing another strange light rainbow to streak into his body, like a trophy. The brutal battle in the sky raged on for half a day. When Lin Dong finally withdrew his battered spear from the body of the last magma crystal dragon, his body wavered on the verge of collapse. Whoosh! The final light rainbow surged into Lin Dong's body. He felt an immense, endless wave of power within him, yet his face was filled with exhaustion. Though his mental energy had rapidly increased after slaying each magma crystal dragon, the toll on his physical stamina had been severe. Just one more. Lin Dong slowly raised his head, his gaze locking onto the enormous, eerie yellow sand face in the sky. He closed his eyes lightly, spread his hands, and radiant silver light began to ripple outward like waves, eventually filling the entire purgatory. If I fail, I shall die trying. A soft muttering voice echoed through the world. The silver light then began to contract, condensing into a towering, solid-like shape, shooting upward toward the vast, strange yellow sand giant face in the sky.